You know, you really deserve what's going to happen to you, you know.
What's gonna happen?
You're going to make a wonderful contribution to society.
Society, a movie from 1989 directed by Brian Yuzna, who brought you Beyond Reanimator and Bride of Reanimator. And if you're not familiar with those movies, they're two body horror movies. So you can see where I'm going with this movie. Let's just say society walked so that the substance can run. So this movie is not the weirdest movie I've seen, believe it or not, but I like it because it is very campy. It's got that body horror. It doesn't take itself seriously, if anyone's ever seen this. And I'm probably gonna like leave out a whole bunch of stuff because this movie is so bonkers anyway that it's kind of hard to like, you know, get every detail when you first watch this. So it's like a movie that you'd have to watch maybe several times to like pick up on little bits and pieces that you haven't noticed the first time. Anyway, it stars Billy Warlock, and he plays a teenager, Billy Whitney. And basically, the premise is that he's always felt like the black sheep of his family. He's always felt like something just wasn't quite right, like with his sister, his parents. They all seem to be very dismissive, no matter like what kinds of things he does or achieves in high school. So it's like the movie begins with him at his therapist, and he's revealing to him all these things. And the therapist is just there. He's assuring him like, oh, this is typical, you know, for someone your age to feel this way. Everything's fine. Then it shows him later at his house with his friend Milo, and they're playing basketball. And like Billy notices that this car is there, David Blanchard, who's his sister's boyfriend. And then he like gets his sister's attention, like, hey, Blanchard's here. And she was just like, Billy, don't want to see him. Can you please get rid of him? And of course, like, this is just news to him, but he's going to go find him anyway. And then it shows her like getting ready for something, and she's trying to find her earring. And then she turns around and notices that her earring is like on the floor in front of her closet. And then that's when you see some rustling. And then the next thing you know, Blanchard like is seen by the sister. She screams. And then Billy comes running upstairs to like, you know, see what's going on. And so she's just like, hey, get him out of here. So he's kicking him out. And on their way out, his parents show up. And you know, they seem very like nonchalant, and by the way, they're very like rich, you know, so they got this beautiful, you know, mansion. So they're like in the foyer, you know, they're just kind of coming in, soireeing in, you know. And so Billy's kicking out Blanchard. And so the dad was just kind of like, he goes to Jenny, he's like, is everything all right, you know? And she's just like, oh yeah, everything's fine. And then, you know, the way he said it, he was like, I thought we weren't going to see any more of David Blanchard, you know? And she's like, oh, don't worry about him. And so like Billy turns to them and tries to have a conversation, but then they just like ignore him completely and go upstairs. And so, you know, Billy like turns to his sister, and he's just like, so what was up with that? And then like her answer was like, oh, well, he just wasn't the right sort. And it's like, she doesn't give any details. But then she's like, hey, can you zip me up? You know, she's wearing like this really nice dress because she has like this coming out like debutante party she's going to tonight. And so he tells her like, oh, I'm sorry, I have to miss that tonight. And so as he's zipping up her dress though, he notices something very weird, like poking out of his sister's back. And earlier he tells the therapist that sometimes he sees things, and the therapist like again assures him like, hey, like it's fine, you know, you're just, you know, typical teenage stuff, just seeing things that's not there. The reason why Billy can't come is that he's got this debate team, like contest thing that he has to do at school. And so like it shows his girlfriend Shauna, she's like a cheerleader, like cheering him on or whatever. And so he goes up on stage and he's like going against this other student named Marty. And like, you know, everything's going well. Like the school seems to be rooting for Billy. And for some weird reason, like suddenly like this mystery girl on the front row like catches his eye, and she's being very like seductive and like, you know, kind of opening her legs a little bit, and it kind of like throws him off a little bit. But then like his girlfriend who's like in the crowd, she just like, ah, you know, and so he like quickly, you know, comes to, and he's like, you know, does the debate well. He, you know, like they, his side wins or whatever, but then he looks over at that row where that girl was sitting and she's gone. And by the way, throughout this whole movie is so funny because like the exposition, the transition, like everything about this movie is just bizarre and they don't explain it. And then after that debate, he goes to the therapist and tells him that he did really well and that he should be celebrating. And so the therapist is like, oh, well, then why aren't you? And then that's when he tells him even more, like, you know, I just really don't feel like I fit in with this family, and like my parents don't treat me like they treat Jenny.
Let's not waste our time bullshitting.
All right. They don't approve of me, okay? They don't accept my friends. They don't talk to me like they do Jenny. Hell, they don't even look like me.
Now, I told you that teenagers sometimes feel alienated from those closest to them.
I think I was adopted.
Later, he goes home and he goes into Jenny's room because he wants to borrow some suntan lotion because he's going to the beach later. And then he like goes in her room, and this is a very like this is when this movie starts to get bizarre, and believe me, it gets even more bizarre after this. He goes in there and asks her like, hey, I'm borrowing this lotion, and then he, for some reason, like, he knows she's showering, but he like goes in and like watches her, and it's like a frosted door, but still, like, that's his sister. But like he notices that like her body looks completely like twisted and contorted, like her face is like backwards, and like it just shows her washing in a very weird like contorted way, and he's just like totally freaked out. And so he like opens the door but like sure enough, she's just like how she is, and she's like, Billy, get out. She's covering herself, and he like runs out because he's like he can't believe what he saw. Then he's downstairs outside in the garden, and he like runs into his parents, and he's like, hey, I'm going to the beach later. But both of his parents could care less. They're just like talking to the gardener and telling them like, oh, this looks good, and he's just like, okay, bye. Later it shows Billy and Shauna at the beach, and Shauna wants so badly for Ferguson to invite them to his party that's happening later. He's like one of the popular guys. And he's just like, okay, I'll ask, but like, we'll see what happens. Well, they get interrupted by like some bratty kids like squirting lotion all over them. So he runs up to chase them. And like, as these kids are getting in the way, he runs into that girl from earlier in the auditorium who was like seducing him. He notices her, and he's like just frozen, like, oh, and she's like walking away. We still don't know who she is yet, but his girlfriend Shauna is watching, and she's just like, like gets mad once again. But then he's just kind of like, oh, okay, focus. So he goes to Ferguson, and Ferguson's in this like really nice little like shaded like tent or whatever at the beach or whatever. And so he goes up to him with his groups of friends, including Marty, that they did at the debate thing earlier. He's just like, so hey, Ferguson, like, what's going on later? And of course, Ferguson, he's just like, nothing's going on, like totally lying to him. And he's just like, all right, well, let me know if something does happen. And Ferguson's just like, yeah, sure. Also, other than that mystery girl, he runs into some other woman who's like this mute like lady, and she's just very weird, but you'll find out who she is later. Then Billy notices that Shauna ditched him, which I would have too. But anyway, at the same time, Blanchard runs into him, and he's just like, Billy, I have to tell you something. This is urgent. Like, you got to believe me. So he pulls him aside, and he shows him this tape, and he's like, you have to listen to this tape. And he confesses that he bugged Jenny's ear the other day, like when he was hiding in her closet. That's why her earring was like on the floor. And so he plays this tape for him, and what's playing is like something so bizarre, and like Billy didn't believe him. But let's just say that this was a recording of Jenny's coming out, and she comes out all right. What sounds like her parents, Ferguson even, basically like all the elite people, like the judge of the town, are involved in something that rhymes with Georgie. And it's like, they play like, different bits and parts of the tape, and it's just them saying and doing all kinds of like gross stuff. Billy takes this tape from Blanchard and then goes to his therapist like later that evening. And so the therapist is like, Billy, like, what are you doing here where you're not scheduled, to see me? And he's like, listen to this tape. You have to listen to this tape. It has Jenny. My parents are on it. Like, please listen to this. It's urgent. And so the therapist is like, well, I'll listen to the tape, but we'll talk about this tomorrow. So the next day comes, and so Billy can't wait to hear from his therapist. Like, did you hear the tape? And so the therapist is just like, well, yeah, it's Jenny's coming out, but, I would advise against recording people, without their knowledge. And so Billy's just like, no, that's not why, like, I gave you this tape. Did you hear what was on it? Like, it's, it's disturbing, blah, blah, blah. And so the therapist even played the tape back, and it was not what was on there. Like, it was just a normal conversations of her, like, debutante ball, and, her asking, ooh, do you want to dance with Ferguson, instead of the other thing that he heard? Like, it's almost like they replaced, like, all the inappropriate words with, like, dancing and eating and, just having a good time. And Billy's losing it. He's like, this is not what I heard. And that's when, like, the therapist snaps.
Billy, people are what they are. Now you have to learn to accept that, and you have to learn to accept society's rules of privacy. If you don't follow the rules, Billy, bad things happen.
Then on his way home, he notices that Blanchard's car was involved in like this horrible accident. Like, just pieces and parts everywhere all over the road, but he didn't see Blanchard. And like the ambulance was like already kind of like on their way out, so he didn't actually get to see Blanchard, but like his car was completely totaled. And so he goes up to like the recording gear that Blanchard had in his car, and that's when he's like quickly interrupted by like one of the cops. He's like, you shouldn't be here, you need to leave. And so Billy just asks like, hey, he was a friend, like, what happened? And of course the cop doesn't like tell him anything. He tells him to leave. He goes home and sees his parents and Jenny sitting there, and like he tells them like, oh my God, I have really bad news, Jenny. And he tells her that Blanchard was involved in a car accident. And of course his dad like already tells him like, oh yes, we know, son. And they're very nonchalant. They could care less. They don't react at all. And Billy's just like flipping out like, Jenny, did you hear what I said? Like, Blanchard's dead. And Jenny's just like, yeah, I heard you. Anyway, you got an invite to Ferguson's party. And like, just completely like, and Billy was just hurt to hear that, because he's just like, I can't believe you have no reaction to, like, I know he was your ex-boyfriend, but still. And, she's just like, hurry up and open the envelope to Ferguson's invite. Like, that's all they care about. Well, anyway, Billy does go to Ferguson's party. But while he's there, I think he's looking for his girlfriend to see if she's there. But instead, he sees Mystery Girl from the beach and the auditorium. And he finds out that her name is Clarissa. And, he goes and dances with her. And they try to like talk, but he's interrupted by his best friend Milo. Like, he comes in and insults Clarissa, and so she kind of just like, blows him off and just walks off. And he sees her like walking in a tent, and Ferguson's always intense. Well, anyway, he goes in there and sees Ferguson, and then he's suspicious from the tape and everything else. Like, he goes to Ferguson and tries to like ask him like, hey, what do you know about Jenny? What do you know about Blanchard? And it's crazy because Ferguson tells him like straight up what he did and said. Like, he's just like, yeah, I had sex with your sister and I killed Blanchard. And, like exactly what he heard on the tape. And then he like pushes him in the pool. And so then it's like Clarissa didn't like that. So she helps him out of the pool and dries him off or whatever. And then like they go back to her place and then they go smash. And after their awkward exchange, he like starts to see her body look all contorted or whatever. But then he's like, kind of like comes out of it and he's like, just seeing things. And like then they have like a weird and awkward exchange after that.
How do you like your tea? Cream? Sugar? Or do you want me to pee in it?
You're a class act, Clarissa.
And then he tells her like, hey, I have to go back home. And then he runs into that weird lady on the beach who is like a mute. That's actually Clarissa's mom. And it's just like a bizarre character that they just kind of like threw in, and she doesn't really do anything but like just be weird throughout this whole movie. So Billy does go back home and he goes to his parents' room, and for some weird reason, both of his parents and Jenny are in lingerie just massaging each other. And he is flipping out, like rightfully so, because he's just like, what the heck is happening here? Like, am I the only one that thinks this is like just so bizarre?
My mother. God knows where my mother is.
I won't tolerate this language from you, young man.
Fuck you, butthead.
So after that awkward exchange, he and Milo go to Blanchard's funeral. And then he's stopped by Marty from the debate team earlier. And Marty's got some surprising things to tell Billy.
It's imperative that I talk with you. It's about your parents. About him. About some of the things that have been happening here lately. Society.
What do you mean, society?
Not here.
Billy tries to go meet Marty later on, but then he notices that Marty's car was run off the road. So he like gets out of his car and goes down there into like the woods or whatever where the car crashed, and notices that Marty was in there dead, but his throat was slit, and like this was foul play. And so like, he's trying to like get help or get out of the woods, but then he's stopped by like a mystery person. Like he pushes him down and starts to run off, and so Billy tries to like chase him, but he couldn't catch him. So then later he goes back to Clarissa's. He goes back to that scene with Clarissa and a cop, and but actually like when they get to the car, it's like a different car and Marty's not there. So he's trying to tell the cop, like, no, this isn't the car. This is not what I saw. Marty's dead. He's out there somewhere. And so the cop's just like, you're crazy. You need to be arrested. And so, like they cooperate and they're like, no, sorry, officer. Cause like, I think at that point he's just like, oh my God, like this whole town is like, in on something. The next day, Billy tries to warn the whole school, like about what he saw last night. And he tells the whole school, he's like, Marty won't be coming because he's dead and Ferguson killed him. And, they're all laughing at him because they're just like, like, you're crazy. Like, what's happening, And he's trying to tell them again, like, no, I saw Marty with my own eyes. He's dead. And if sure enough, Marty is walking up on stage and just like, like, oh, like, I'm just a little late or something. Like he says something, of that sort. And so Billy cannot believe, like, oh my God, like Marty's alive. He's going back to his car and he stopped by Milo. Milo believes him because he tells him like, hey, I've been seeing some weird stuff too. Billy goes back home and he sees Jenny, his parents, and his therapist all sitting there. And he's just like, what's going on? And so, like, his parents are basically telling him, like, hey, we've noticed that, you've been acting weird and we need to do something about that. So, like, these people come and drug him or sedate him. And, he's like thrown into the back of an ambulance car. Milo actually followed him to the house. He sees these Billy being hauled off, and so Milo follows them to the hospital. Now this next scene is weird and almost didn't need to be in the movie, but Milo runs into like the triage, and he's asking the nurse like, hey, I'm looking for Billy Whitney. They just brought him in. And she's just like, well, you better check with the morgue. And so he's just like, what? And then the next scene, it shows Billy, he like wakes up and like nothing happened. And then he like, it just goes and shows him like walking to the car later. And then Milo's like, you know, catches up with him. So I felt like that whole scene was just added footage to the movie. I don't know why that was in there, but like Billy's fine. But one thing about Billy is that somehow he has this like surge of confidence. Like after getting out of the hospital, he like drives over to Clarissa's house and like for some reason starts like manhandling her and shaking her around like for no reason. And then she's just like, Billy, stop it. And he's just like, I don't know why. He just starts roughing her up. And then she tries to warn him, though. She's just like, Billy, like, don't go home. And he's like, why not? I've got nothing to lose. So he goes home. And, like, seemingly, like, nobody's there. Lights are off or whatever. So he's walking around a little bit. But then suddenly the lights do turn on. And then he's, like, wrangled, like, by cops. And suddenly you find out, like, the whole town is, like, at his house. This is the part where it goes off the rails. So all these people, including the judge, therapist, Ferguson's there, like everybody's there. They're all telling him that they're a part of this society that Billy will never understand or be a part of. And so Billy's like calling to his mother, and his mother's just like, I am not your mother. Like everyone's all disgusted with him. Meanwhile, Milo is parked outside. He notices that there's an ambulance, or there's like a mystery car that pulls up, and they're taking somebody out with like a bag over their head, and he's wondering who that is. But right after, he also notices that Clarissa pulls up, so that's when Milo like tries to sneak in after.
Understand, don't you, Bill? You're a different race from us, a different species, a different class. You're not one of us. You have to be born into society. It's a matter of good breeding, really.
So they bring into the crowd this mystery person with a bag over its head. Turns out it's Blanchard, who's also not a part of society. And so this is the part where, like, the body horror comes in, because they all start to suddenly mutate, and to show Billy what they're going to do to Blanchard. And they all start, like, absorbing into each other and getting all intertwined and, like, kind of absorbing onto Blanchard, basically, like, just, like, sucking the life out of him. And it's so gross. Like, you would have to watch it. Like, I don't think I could even show you everything, but it's a sight for sure. But while these people are getting into society, and something rhyming with Georgie, Clarissa is setting Billy free. So he's like running off, and he's getting chased by the therapist upstairs. He hides in his parents' room, and what he sees up there is so bizarre, but so funny at the same time. It's his parents and Jenny, who are also in their own little separate, intertwined thing going on.
Well, son, I guess you're ready. I am a butthead.
Meanwhile, the rest of the town is downstairs in their little Jabba the Hutt pile, and it just shows a bunch of like close-ups of like heads and like arms and like fingers sticking into skin, and it's just so bizarre and crazy.
Hey, come on, you guys, knock it off, will you? Hey, you have got to come downstairs. You've got to see this. Right out. We're changing. Oh, really? Into what?
The therapist finally catches Billy and he takes him to Ferguson. And then they have like an all-out like brawl. Ferguson is beating the crap out of Billy. And so finally Ferguson is, he tries to like show him that like he is in fact better than him and that he will never be a part of this, you know, elite society. So then he tries to like absorb himself onto Billy. Then Billy, with all his strength, punches him from under and shoves his hand all the way up Ferguson until it like comes out of his head, pulls him back down, and he like rips him inside out. And this completely freaks out the whole rest of the society. They're like totally afraid of Billy. And so that's actually now his chance to escape with Milo and Clarissa. They all three like, you know, run out of the house. They drive off into the sunset. And like, it just basically ends that way with like Ferguson, who's, you know, on the floor inside out.
Pull myself together.
So if you've seen this movie, let me know in the comments if I left anything out. But yeah, this movie is so crazy. If you could find it, I know it used to be on Amazon Prime. I don't know if it still is, but if you see it anywhere on streaming, I suggest it if you like that kind of thing.
Dr. Cleveland, it looks as though I may have an opening in Washington next summer. Know what I mean?